An Egyptian physician sits in a temple healing room somewhere along the Nile. The year is approximately 1500 BC. A patient has come to him with swollen, painful joints, hands that no longer close fully, knees that grind with every step. The physician does not guess. He reaches for a scroll. The Ebers Papyrus, one of the oldest medical documents in human history, contains over 700 documented remedies, and within its pages is a specific prescription for joint pain and inflammation. Willow bark, prepared and applied with deliberate, careful instruction. That physician lived 3,500 years ago, and what he prescribed that day in a temple along the Nile is the same compound that modern biochemists have spent decades studying. The same compound that pharmaceutical companies eventually synthesized into the pill now found in every medicine cabinet on Earth. He did not have a laboratory. He did not have a clinical trial. He had thousands of years of careful human observation before him, and he had a patient in pain. This video is about what he knew, what healers across Egypt, India, China, and Greece documented, tested, and passed forward across millennia, and what modern research, slowly, sometimes reluctantly, is now confirming. If you wake up stiff, if your hands ache before you have had your first cup of tea, if you have been told that arthritis is simply something to manage and never something to address at the root, this was made for you. Here is what most arthritis patients are told. Your cartilage is breaking down, the joints are inflamed, we can slow the progression with medication, we can manage the pain, but we cannot reverse it. Take this prescription, come back in 3 months. That is not a false statement, but it is an incomplete one. Because what that conversation almost never includes is this. Arthritis is one of the most extensively documented conditions in the entire history of natural medicine. Every major healing tradition on Earth, Ayurveda, traditional Chinese medicine, ancient Greek medicine, indigenous North American healing, Islamic Unani medicine, developed specific, detailed, multi-remedy protocols for joint inflammation. Not vague wellness suggestions, documented prescriptions with preparations, dosages, and observed outcomes recorded and refined over generations. And in the last 3 decades, modern research has caught up to many of those protocols. Peer-reviewed clinical trials have now tested the primary natural remedies that ancient physicians prescribed for arthritis. Several of them have demonstrated anti-inflammatory effects comparable to standard pharmaceutical treatments, without the gastrointestinal damage, cardiovascular risk, and long-term dependency those drugs carry. The question is not whether natural remedies for arthritis exist. The evidence across 3,000 years says they do. The question is why most arthritis patients have never been told about them by the people treating them. Before the remedies make sense, the condition has to make sense, and most people living with arthritis have never been given a clear explanation of what is actually happening inside their joints. Arthritis is not one disease, it is a category. The 2 most common forms are osteoarthritis and rheumatoid arthritis. Osteoarthritis is mechanical. The cartilage that cushions your joints wears down over time, causing bone to grind against bone, producing pain, stiffness, and reduced range of motion. Rheumatoid arthritis is autoimmune. The immune system mistakenly attacks the synovial membrane, the tissue lining your joints, triggering chronic inflammation that eventually damages cartilage and bone. Both conditions share one central driver: inflammation. Chronic, sustained, destructive inflammation that the body cannot resolve on its own. And this is exactly why the natural remedies that have survived 3,000 years of use make biological sense. Because every single remedy we are about to examine works in one way or another on inflammation. Ancient healers did not have the language of modern biochemistry, but they observed, over generations of careful practice, that certain plants and certain practices reduced swelling, restored movement, and relieved pain. They identified the target before science had a name for it. Remedy 1. Turmeric. In Ayurvedic medicine, turmeric has been prescribed for joint inflammation for over 4,000 years. Ancient Sanskrit medical texts list it specifically for conditions we would today recognize as arthritis, swollen joints, morning stiffness, and pain that worsens in cold or damp conditions. Ancient Indian physicians called it the golden healer. They were not being poetic, they were being precise. The active compound is curcumin. It works by suppressing the inflammatory cascade at a molecular level, interrupting the very signals that tell the body to keep attacking its own joint tissue. This is why turmeric was not simply sprinkled on food in ancient medicine. It was prepared specifically to maximize its effect on the body. How to prepare and use the ancient method. Ancient Ayurvedic physicians always combined turmeric with black pepper and a fat source. They did not know the biochemical reason, but the reason is now understood. The piperine in black pepper dramatically increases the body's ability to absorb curcumin. The fat carries it into the bloodstream. Without these two additions, most of the curcumin passes through the body unused. The traditional preparation is a warm golden paste. Combine 1 teaspoon of turmeric powder with a generous pinch of black pepper and a teaspoon of ghee or coconut oil. Mix into warm water or warm milk. Traditionally whole cow's milk, or in South Indian practice, coconut milk. This was taken once in the morning and once before sleep. For arthritic joints specifically, Ayurvedic texts also recommend applying warm turmeric paste directly to swollen joints, covered with a cloth, and left for 30 minutes before washing off. The ancient prescription was not occasional, it was daily, consistent, seasonal. A practice, not a pill. Remedy 2. Ginger. Ginger appears in arthritis treatment protocols in ancient India, China, and Arabia. The Islamic physician Ibn Sina, known in the West as Avicenna, dedicated specific sections of his canon of medicine, written in the 11th century, to ginger as a treatment for joint pain and stiffness. But the use predates him by centuries. Ayurvedic texts from 2000 BC reference ginger for what they called amavata, a condition whose description matches rheumatoid arthritis precisely. Ginger works on inflammation through multiple pathways simultaneously. Ancient healers could not have articulated this mechanism, but they observed its effect: reduced swelling, improved mobility, measurable pain relief, consistently enough that every major healing tradition preserved and passed it forward. How to prepare and use the ancient method. In traditional medicine, ginger was rarely used raw for arthritis. The most common ancient preparation was a strong decoction, what we would today call a medicinal tea, brewed far stronger than a culinary infusion. Take a thumb-sized piece of fresh ginger root, slice it thin, place it in 2 cups of water and bring to a boil. Reduce the heat and simmer for 20 minutes. Not 5, not 10, 20. This is what ancient physicians meant by decoction. You are extracting the medicinal compounds through sustained heat, not steeping a tea bag. Strain, add a small amount of raw honey, and drink warm. Traditional practice prescribed this twice daily, morning and evening, taken consistently over weeks, not days. For topical use on swollen joints, ancient Indian and Chinese practitioners prepared ginger poultices. Grate fresh ginger, warm it gently in a dry pan for 2 minutes, wrap in a thin cloth, and apply directly to the affected joint for 15 to 20 minutes. The warmth opens circulation to the area. The gingerols penetrate the tissue. This was considered an essential companion to the internal preparation. Remedy 3. Boswellia. Boswellia, the resin of the Boswellia serrata tree, known historically as frankincense, has been used in Ayurvedic medicine for arthritis for over 3,000 years. It appears in ancient texts under the name shalaki, prescribed specifically for swollen, painful joints and loss of mobility. In ancient Arabian medicine, it was equally revered. Frankincense was not merely ceremonial. In the hands of ancient physicians, it was one of the most precise anti-inflammatory tools in the entire natural pharmacy. What makes Boswellia remarkable is that it targets an inflammatory pathway that most pharmaceutical anti-inflammatories do not reach. Ancient healers could not have known this distinction, but they observed clinically that Boswellia worked in cases where other remedies fell short. That observation was correct. How to prepare and use the ancient method. In traditional Ayurvedic practice, Boswellia resin was taken internally as a powder mixed with warm ghee or warm water. The standard ancient preparation was 1 teaspoon of shalaki powder stirred into warm ghee, taken on an empty stomach in the morning. This fat-based delivery was intentional. Boswellic acids are fat-soluble, and ancient physicians observed that this method produced stronger results than taking the powder dry. Externally, Boswellia resin was melted gently and blended with sesame oil, a base oil considered by Ayurvedic physicians to have its own anti-inflammatory and penetrating properties, and massaged directly into arthritic joints with firm circular strokes. This practice, called abhyanga when applied to the full body, was adapted for localized joint treatment as a daily ritual for those with chronic joint conditions. The ancient prescription was morning oil massage on affected joints, followed by warmth, either sunlight or a warm cloth compress applied over the oiled joint. If what you are hearing is connecting something for you, if you are seeing for the first time that this knowledge is real, ancient, and deeply considered, the most important thing you can do right now is subscribe and share this with someone living with joint pain. That is genuinely how this reaches the people who need it most. Remedy 4. Willow bark. We return to where we began, the willow tree that the Egyptian physician reached for in 1500 BC. The Ebers Papyrus prescribed willow bark specifically for pain and inflammation. Hippocrates, the father of Greek medicine, documented it for fever and joint pain in the 5th century BC. For over 2,000 years, healers across the ancient world prepared willow bark as their primary analgesic. Aspirin, developed in 1897, is the synthetic version of the active compound in willow bark. The pharmaceutical industry, in effect, recreated what grew along every riverbank in the ancient world. But in the process of isolating and synthesizing the compound, something was left behind. The whole plant contains a full spectrum of supporting compounds that appear to buffer the stomach and modulate the effect in ways the isolated molecule does not. How to prepare and use the ancient method. The ancient preparation was a bark decoction. Strip or purchase dried willow bark. White willow, Salix alba, is the species documented most extensively in ancient texts. Take 1 to 2 teaspoons of dried bark for every 2 cups of cold water. Place in a pot, bring slowly to a boil, then reduce and simmer for 20 minutes. This slow extraction is essential. Ancient physicians understood that bark required sustained heat to release its medicinal compounds fully. Strain and drink 1 cup warm 2 to 3 times daily during periods of active joint pain. In ancient Greek and Egyptian practice, willow bark preparations were also used as topical compresses. A strong decoction was cooled to a warm but comfortable temperature. Cloths were soaked in it, and the cloths were applied directly to swollen, painful joints for 30 minutes. This external application was considered complementary to the internal dose, not a replacement for it. Remedy 5. Omega-3 fatty acids. Every ancient maritime culture, Greek, Norse, Japanese, coastal, indigenous, consumed cold water fish as a dietary staple. Ancient Greek physicians documented fatty fish consumption specifically for joint conditions. Ancient Japanese Kampo medicine prescribed specific fish preparations for inflammatory conditions. The observation was consistent across cultures that had no contact with one another. People who ate cold water fish regularly had less joint inflammation. Ancient healers did not know why. They recorded what they saw. What they saw was the anti-inflammatory effect of omega-3 fatty acids, compounds found in abundance in cold water fish like mackerel, sardines, herring, and wild salmon. These compounds directly reduce the production of the inflammatory chemicals that drive joint destruction in both osteoarthritis and rheumatoid arthritis. How to prepare and use the ancient method. The ancient prescription was dietary first. Traditional Greek medicine recommended consuming oily fish 2 to 3 times weekly, prepared simply, grilled, steamed, or poached, never fried, which ancient physicians observed diminished the therapeutic effect. The simplest preparation was always the most effective. For those who could not access fresh fish, ancient coastal cultures preserved fatty fish in salt or fermented them, methods that retained the medicinal compounds. Fermented fish preparations, though not palatable to everyone, were specifically prescribed in ancient Japanese and Nordic traditions for chronic joint conditions. The traditional accompaniment was always a bitter green, dandelion, watercress, or wild chicory, which ancient physicians believed supported the liver in processing the fats and amplifying the anti-inflammatory effect. Modern understanding of bile production and fat metabolism suggests they were observing something real. If fresh, oily fish is not accessible regularly, ancient practice can be approximated with high-quality fish oil. Take it with food, with a fat-containing meal, always, exactly as ancient physicians prescribed their fish preparations. Never on an empty stomach. Remedy 6. Movement as medicine. Every ancient healing tradition prescribed movement for arthritic joints. Every one. Greek physicians, Ayurvedic masters, traditional Chinese medicine practitioners with their systems of Qigong and Tai Chi. They observed something that contradicted instinct, that a painful joint, gently and consistently moved, healed better than a joint that was rested and protected. This was not a casual recommendation. In ancient Greek medicine, specific movement prescriptions were written alongside herbal ones. In traditional Chinese medicine, Qigong sequences were designed specifically for joint conditions, slow, deliberate, low-impact movements that circulated what ancient Chinese physicians called vital energy through the joint structures. In Ayurveda, specific yoga postures were prescribed for arthritic conditions with the same seriousness as herbal formulas. How to perform the movement remedy, the ancient method. The ancient movement prescription for arthritic joints followed 3 principles that every tradition shared. Warmth first, gentleness throughout, consistency above all else. Begin every movement session by warming the affected joints. Ancient physicians used warm oil massage, warm water immersion, or warm cloth compresses before asking a patient with arthritis to move. Cold joints move badly and heal slowly. Warm joints move freely and respond. The movements themselves were always slow, controlled, and performed within a pain-free range. Traditional Chinese Qigong for joint health involves slow circular movements of the affected joints. Wrists circled gently 10 times in each direction, knees bent and straightened slowly in a supported position, shoulders rolled in full slow circles. These were not exercises in the modern sense. They were medicine delivered through motion. The ancient prescription was daily, not occasional, not when you feel like it. Every single day, even for 5 minutes, even on the days when the joints are at their worst, especially on those days. Ancient physicians observed consistently that the patients who moved daily healed. The patients who rested and waited did not. The remedy that costs nothing. The remedy every ancient tradition agreed on. The remedy most arthritis patients today are still afraid to use because they were told that pain means stop. It does not mean stop. It means move carefully, move gently, and move every single day. Step back for a moment and look at what just happened. 6 remedies, and behind every single one of them, turmeric, ginger, boswellia, willow bark, omega-3s, movement. There is an ancient tradition that arrived at the same answer independently. Egypt, India, China, Greece, the Islamic world. They did not share notes. They did not attend the same conferences. They were separated by thousands of miles and hundreds of years. And they kept finding the same things. That is not coincidence. That is convergent discovery. When multiple independent civilizations, working from observation alone, arrive at the same remedy for the same condition across centuries, that is the oldest form of clinical evidence in existence. Modern research did not discover these remedies. It confirmed them. There is a difference, and that difference matters enormously, because it means this knowledge was not waiting for a laboratory to make it real. It was real. The laboratory simply caught up. So why do most arthritis patients not know this? The answer is not complicated. Modern medicine is built around patentable compounds. You cannot patent willow bark. You cannot patent turmeric root. You cannot patent the act of walking. When there is no financial return attached to a remedy, there is no financial engine driving its research, its promotion, or its integration into clinical practice. That is beginning to change. Integrative medicine, the field that combines the best of conventional and evidence-based natural approaches, is one of the fastest-growing areas in modern healthcare. Major medical institutions now have dedicated integrative medicine departments where ancient remedies are being studied, validated, and prescribed alongside pharmaceutical ones. The knowledge was never lost. It was sidelined. And it is coming back, not because it is new, but because it is true. You are part of that recovery. Every person who chooses to understand and apply this knowledge is part of bringing it back into the world. 3 things to carry with you. First, inflammation is the engine of arthritis, and nature has been engineering remedies against that engine for 3,000 years. Turmeric with black pepper and ghee, ginger decocted for 20 minutes, Boswellia in warm oil, willow bark brewed slowly from dried bark, fatty fish eaten consistently, joints moved gently every single day. These are not suggestions. They are a system. Ancient physicians prescribed them together because they work together. Second, the healers who developed these remedies were not guessing. They were observing, recording, and refining over generations. When Egypt, India, China, and Greece arrive at the same answer independently, that answer has earned your attention and your trust. Third, your body is not simply a system in decline. It is a system that was designed with the capacity to respond, to reduce inflammation, to restore mobility, and to heal. The ancient physicians who treated joint pain for 3,000 years before the first pharmaceutical existed believed that. The evidence they left behind supports it. You do not have to choose between ancient wisdom and modern understanding. The best of both is pointing in exactly the same direction. If this opened something up for you, if you are seeing the evidence for natural arthritis treatment in a way you have not seen it before, the most valuable thing you can do is subscribe, leave a comment, and share this with someone who is living with joint pain right now. That is genuinely how this reaches the people who need it. God bless you.